everyone, I'm Sakshi Tiwari and I welcome you to our new lesson. Well, do you know what opposites are? Opposites are the words that mean opposite of each other, isn't it? Like hot and cold, right? Day and night, or big and small. Yes, now look at this word. Comfortable, right? Do you know what that means? Well, it means feeling good or feeling at ease, right? Now, what's the opposite of this word? Well, if we add un in front of it, we get the word, uncomfortable, which is the opposite of comfortable. Yes? Wow, did you see that just by adding these two letters, we've got the opposite of this word. Now, can you think of any other word, that we can change? Let's try with this word, help. Now, if I add the word FUL after it, it becomes helpful. Do you know what that means? It means someone who is ready to help, right? And if we add the, word LESS to the end of it, it becomes, helpless, which means not able to help. So, did you see that by adding less, we made the opposite? Isn't it just so amazing, that just by adding these small parts to a word can change its meaning completely, and we get altogether a new word. What do we call these 2 to 3 letter words? Well, these are prefixes and suffixes, and they help us in creating new words and in changing the meaning of the ones we already know. And today we'll be learning about them. Today we'll be learning the way to multiply our vocabulary by learning so many prefixes and suffixes in the easiest way possible. I welcome you to our new lesson, which is multiply your vocabulary through prefixes and suffixes, where we are going to understand what actually prefixes and suffixes are. Okay, along with this, we are going to learn the most common prefixes and suffixes, right? We won't stop there only. We are also going to practice creating new words by adding prefixes and suffixes to the base word. Okay, so let's get started with the lesson. First thing first, what are prefixes? See, a prefix is a small group of letters which is added to the beginning of a word. Now, when we add a prefix, we can change the meaning of the original word completely, right? Prefix, as it says, means before. So, prefix often give us clues about time, place, quantity, or even opposites, right? So, let me give you, some common prefixes using which you can actually enhance your vocabulary. You can get a new word altogether. The first one is this one, which is UN, as we saw earlier, right? Now, UN, which is un, it makes the word, mean the opposite. Like comfortable becomes uncomfortable. Opposite completely, not comfortable. Another example can be happy. And then if I add this prefix un, it becomes not happy, right? So this is one prefix. The other one is re. Now, this prefix means again or back. It is used when something happens again, or it is, returned to its original state. For example, do becomes redo, which means do it again, right? Write becomes rewrite, which means write again, right? Isn't it interesting? Yes, let's look at the third prefix, which is this. Now, this prefix means not or opposite of. For example, agree becomes disagree, like I don't, agree with you, I disagree with you. Connect becomes disconnect, which means not connected, right? The fourth ones are im and in. Now, both these prefixes mean not or without. Now, use im before words starting with m or p and use in with other ones, right? Like possible becomes impossible, means not possible. Yes, complete becomes incomplete, which means, of course, it was not complete, right? How about this one, pre? Now, this prefix means, before, pre. It is used when something happens before something else. For example, view becomes preview, which means I have seen it beforehand, right? Heat becomes preheat, which means, it was already, heated beforehand, right? The next one is post. Now, this prefix means after. It is used when something happens after something else. Okay, let's look at some examples. Like war becomes post-war, which means after the war. Graduate becomes postgraduate, which means after the graduation. Yes, how about this one, miss? Now, this prefix means wrong or bad. Now it is used to show something which is done incorrectly, like spell becomes misspelled. You misspelled that word, right? It means you spelt it incorrectly, right? Understand becomes misunderstand, right? You misunderstood it. It means you understood it incorrectly or wrongly, right? How about this one? Over. Now this prefix means too much or excessive. Over, right? It is used when something is done little too much. For example, eat becomes over it, which means you've eaten too much. Achiever becomes overachiever, which means that someone who does more than expected, right? Let's look at this one. Under. Now this prefix means too little, yes, or insufficient, not matching up. It shows something is below what is needed, right? Let me give you some examples, like estimate becomes underestimate. What does it mean? It means that, to estimate less than needed, right? Let's look at the other example, which is again achiever becomes underachiever. We talked about over, right? Now we're talking about under. Someone who does less than expected, right? What about this one? Anti. Yes. Now this prefix means against or opposed to. For example, biotic. Yes. The opposite is antibiotic, which means against life. It is used to kill bacteria, right? Social becomes antisocial, which means against socializing, or avoiding interactions with others. What about this one? Sub, right? Now this prefix means under or below. For example, marine becomes submarine. Underwater vehicle, right? Standard becomes substandard, all right? Below the standard again, right? Not meeting the standard or not meeting the expectations, right? What about this one? Pro. Now this prefix means for or in favor of. For example, active becomes proactive. What does it mean? It means acting in advance, acting in advance to prevent some problems, right? What about this one? Inter. Now this prefix means between or among. For example, national becomes international, which means between or among the nations, right? Act becomes interact, which means to act with others, right? Talk to others, communicate with others. What about this one? Trans. Now this prefix means across or beyond. For example, port becomes transport, right? Which means to carry across, like transportation of goods, transport. Form becomes transform, which means to change its form completely, right? This one, en. Now this prefix means to make something little more. For example, able becomes enable. It means to make something possible, enable it. Large becomes enlarge. Okay, now again, it means to make something larger, right? Great. So these were certain prefixes that, using which you can actually enhance, improve your vocabulary, and you'll have like so many words already in your mind. You know that when to use this, when to use when to use, pre, etc. Right? Isn't it fantastic and magical? Now let's talk about suffixes. Now a suffix is a small group of letters added to the end of a word. Prefix, pre, right, before, and suffix is, they're added at the end. Suffix can change the part of speech, such as turning a noun into an adjective or an adjective into an adverb. So let's learn some common suffixes using which you can actually empower yourself and you can enhance your vocabulary. The first one being full. Now this suffix means full of or having qualities of, okay? Now it turns nouns into adjectives, like beauty becomes beautiful, right? Which means full of beauty. Joy becomes joyful, full of joy, right? On contrary, this next suffix is less, which means without. It turns nouns or adjectives into their opposite, like hope becomes hopeless, without hope, right? Care becomes careless, which means somebody who just doesn't care or without care, right? What about this one? Ly. Now this suffix turns adjectives into adverbs, which often means, in a certain way. Quick becomes quickly, which means, in a quick manner. We can take another example, which is happy. Now happy becomes happily, in a happy manner, right? Let's look at this one, which is ness. Now this suffix turns adjectives into nouns, showing a state or quality. right? For example, kind becomes kindness, the state of being kind, right? Happy becomes happiness, again, the state of being happy, right? I hope you're able to understand. Yes, let's look at this next suffix, which is er or or. Okay, now this suffix turns verbs into nouns, okay, which means someone who does an action, like teach becomes teacher, right? Someone who actually teaches, like I am a teacher. Okay, act becomes actor, right? Now someone who actually acts. Isn't it just fantastic? The next one is this one, which is meant. Now this suffix turns verbs into nouns, indicating the result or process of an action. Like enjoy becomes enjoyment, the state of enjoying, right? Achieve becomes, achievement, right? Which means the result of achieving something, right? The next one is able or able, right? Now these suffixes mean able to, or something is capable of something, like read becomes readable. Something is, we are able to read, or something is able, being able to be read, right? See becomes visible, okay, able to be seen, right? The next one is ick. Now this suffix turns nouns into adjectives, often meaning having or pertaining to, okay, like music becomes musical, related to music, okay. History becomes historical, which means of course related to history, right? The next one is shun, okay, tion or sion. Like now these suffixes turn verbs into nouns, showing action or process, okay. For example, create becomes creation. Now it's showing the act of creating. Decide becomes decision. It talks about the act of deciding, okay. The next one is ity. Now this suffix turns adjectives into nouns, indicating a state or condition, like active becomes activity, okay, the state of being active. All right. The next one is creative becomes creativity, the quality of being creative, right? Great. The next one being this one, which is ness. Now this suffix turns adjectives into nouns, showing a state of quality or being. Sad becomes sadness, the state of being sad, right? Similarly, dark becomes darkness, which talks about the state of being dark or being in dark, right? Next one is us. Now this suffix turns adjectives into words that describe a quality. For example, danger becomes dangerous. Now it talks about that something is full of danger. Fame becomes famous, which talks about something which is full of fame or which is known, right? The next one being this one, which is n. Now this suffix turns adjectives into verbs, means to make or to become, like wide becomes widen, which means to make something wider, right? Hard becomes harden, which means to make something even more harder, right? What about this one, ship? If we add ship at the end of a word, now this one turns nouns into other nouns, often indicating a relationship or condition or skill. For example, friend becomes friendship. Now this one talks about the relationship of being friends, right? Leader becomes leadership. Now this one again talks about the condition or ability to lead, right? And the last one being this one, which is ward or wards. Now these suffixes show direction or movement, okay, like backward. Yes, back, if we add word, it means moving in the opposite direction. Forward, right, if I add word in that, it means moving in the direction ahead, right? So these were certain prefixes and suffixes. Isn't it just amazing that how adding a small word can change its entire meaning, and we can get introduced to so many new words. We can add so many new words just by understanding these. Now I would like you to try some on your own. Okay, so I'm going to give you some certain words, and all that you have to do is to add prefix. For each word, add a prefix to make the opposite or create a new meaning. All right, the first word being this one, comfortable. Okay, uncomfortable, right? Happy, unhappy, able, unable, do, undo, legal, illegal, right? Okay, the next one, you have to add suffixes now, all right, for each word. suffixes at the end. Okay, the first word is this one. What do you think of it? Okay, great. Helpful or maybe helpless, either of them. The next one, careful or careless, act, actor, right? Beauty, beautiful, achieve, achiever. Excellent. I hope you were able to answer all of these correctly. And with this, we've come to the end of our lesson, where today we learned what prefixes and suffixes are. We can use prefixes and suffixes to multiply our vocabulary, to create opposites, form new words, and to expand our vocabulary. All right, so take your time to practice and test your understanding, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Not to forget, if you want to master your spoken English, you can look for these ebooks. Where to find them? They're of 100 to 150 rupees. If you want the combo of it, you can pay 400 rupees. Where to find these ebooks? Check my Instagram link, which is in the description or comments pinned already, and follow me on my Instagram. Check my story. You can click on order and you'll get the ebook within 5 minutes. All right, so I'll see you in the next lesson. Till then, keep learning, keep growing. Happy learning.